Welcome the anointed ones. When a pack of wolves can't take down a lion, they eventually turn on each other. Family. Let's be brutally honest. Jealousy is one of the most ancient diseases of humanity, and history proves it's deadlier than any virus. Studies have shown that envy doesn't just sit in the mind. It eats away at the body like poison, literally raising stress hormones, weakening immunity, and even shortening lifespans. So when a jealous group of people plotted against you, they weren't just risking your downfall. They were signing up for their own slow destruction. Now here's the suspenseful twist. While they thought they were orchestrating your collapse, heaven was documenting their every move. What they whispered in secret is being broadcast in the spirit. What they threw at you in malice is bouncing back like a boomerang. Return to sender, no postage needed. And here's the humorous part. It's almost like they mailed a letter addressed to you, but forgot you live in a house shielded by divine firewalls. Now the package is sitting on their own porch, ticking louder and louder. This isn't ordinary karma. This is divine justice in its rawest form. Not petty revenge, not childish payback, but a spiritual balancing act so precise that you don't even have to lift a finger. The very plot designed to bury you has become the evidence that elevates you. And the beauty of it all? You survived. Not by fighting dirty, but by standing still while the universe fought for you. Stay with me, because what I'm about to break down will shake you. How the jealous crew that came together in wickedness are now trapped in their own net. Why their alliance was doomed from the start, and how divine law is exposing every hidden motive they thought would stay in the shadows. Get ready, because this isn't just about what they did to you, it's about what heaven is now doing to them. Number 1. Their plot was the proof you were untouchable. The fact that a group of people had to come together just to try and pull you down is already proof of how untouchable you are. One person's jealousy wasn't enough. One person's slander wasn't enough. One person's attack wasn't enough. It took a collective effort. That alone speaks volumes. Think about it. If you were ordinary, it wouldn't require a committee. The reality is that the weight you carry spiritually, mentally, and even energetically is so intimidating that no single individual could handle the assignment of trying to dim your light. They had to gather like cowards in a corner because one-on-one, they knew they would lose. This is what most people don't realize about spiritual warfare. The size of the attack always reveals the size of the calling. The moment you noticed not just one but multiple people aligning themselves against you, it was confirmation that you hold a level of significance that is rare. They couldn't ignore you, so they decided to band together against you. And ironically, by doing that, they exposed your true power. Their attempt to destroy you became an accidental announcement that you are chosen, set apart, and dangerous to the false systems they built their lives on. You didn't have to prove your strength. Their reaction proved it for you. People don't plot against what they don't fear. Nobody gathers a whole group to stop someone who doesn't matter. Their jealousy wasn't triggered by weakness. It was triggered by the undeniable weight of your presence, the way you shift atmospheres, and the way your existence challenges the mediocrity they've settled for. Their plotting was the clearest sign that your influence is bigger than you even realized. And here's the truth they never expected to face. By joining forces, they thought they multiplied their power. But all they did was multiply their exposure. The very need to unite against you is what revealed how fragile they are. It showed the cracks in their foundation, it showed their desperation, and it showed their fear. You became the mirror they couldn't look at directly, so they tried to break it. But instead of breaking you, their own plotting has shattered their credibility, their peace, and soon their lives as they knew it. What was meant to be your downfall has become undeniable proof that you were never ordinary, and that is the part they will never recover from. Number 2, jealousy is not about what you have, but who you are. They didn't come together against you because of what you own or what you've achieved. If it were just about money, status, or material success, They could have competed, copied, or tried to outdo you. That would have been easier. But the truth is, their jealousy runs much deeper. It's about who you are at the core. It's about the essence you carry, that inner light that can't be manufactured, imitated, or purchased. And that's exactly why it torments them. There's something unsettling about a person who simply exists and yet commands attention without even trying. You didn't beg for validation, you didn't chase after their approval, and still your presence speaks volumes. That is what disturbed them. While they're busy curating appearances, masking insecurities, and fighting for scraps of recognition, you stand as living proof that authenticity carries a power they can't touch. You are not threatening because of what you've done. You are threatening because of who you are. That's the kind of jealousy that cuts the deepest. They could tolerate your wins if they came from manipulation like theirs. They could handle your progress if it was built on compromise like theirs. But the fact that you walk with an energy they can't reproduce, a kind of grace they can't fake, and a resilience they can't borrow, it drives them mad. They look at you and see a standard they can never reach, no matter how hard they try. That's why the plotting wasn't optional for them. It was the only way they felt they could level the playing field. What they failed to realize is that essence is untouchable. They could try to strip away your opportunities, but they can't strip away your presence. They could try to poison your reputation, but they can't silence the way your spirit speaks before you open your mouth. They could gather in their jealousy, but jealousy has no real strategy. It only has desperation, and desperation always exposes itself in time. Their obsession with you was never about envy of your possessions. It was their quiet confession that they saw something in you they wished they had. Their plotting was nothing more than proof that your very existence unsettles the counterfeit they live in. They weren't fighting against your achievements. They were fighting against the reality that you can't be duplicated, and that's the truth that will haunt them the longest. Number 3, they created their own trap by naming you their enemy. The moment they decided you were their enemy, they set themselves up for a downfall. People think choosing an enemy is harmless, but spiritually, it's one of the most dangerous decisions a person can make. By targeting you, they unknowingly tied themselves to your destiny, and that was their biggest mistake. Obsession is not free. It comes with consequences. The energy they put into plotting against you wasn't just wasted, it became a cord connecting them to the very fate they wanted to destroy. This is where divine law comes into play. When someone declares war on a soul that's divinely protected, they stop walking their own path and start walking straight into judgment. They could have left you alone and lived in peace, but instead, they chose to invest their time, their conversations, and even their relationships into conspiring against you. That constant focus gave you authority over their lives without you lifting a finger. Their downfall was sealed the moment they named you as the one to bring down. What they didn't realize is that every plot needs permission from a higher power to succeed. And in this case, heaven denied them before they even began. By naming you their enemy, they weren't just fighting a person. They were fighting the divine covering over your life. That is a battle they could never win. Instead of seeing that their resistance only magnified your protection, they doubled down, making the tie between your victory and their collapse even stronger. Now they're paying for it. Everything they tried to build on the back of your name is crumbling. Every conversation of malice has turned into evidence against them. They can't run from it, because once they bound themselves to your destiny, your rise automatically became their exposure. It's not because you wished it on them, but because divine law doesn't bend for anyone. When you set yourself against a chosen one, you are no longer in control of your life. Your downfall is scripted by the very forces you tried to challenge. So in the end, naming you their enemy wasn't power, it was their surrender. Without realizing it, they handed their future over to the same divine order that's elevating you. And now, their judgment is not just random chaos. It is the natural consequence of a choice they should have never made. Number 4. Divine justice does not mirror human revenge. Divine justice is on a completely different level than human revenge, and that's what makes it so powerful. When people hurt us, it's natural to want to see them hurt the same way. That's human instinct. But God doesn't work like that. He doesn't waste time with petty payback, because his justice isn't about making someone cry for the sake of entertainment. It's about restoring balance, setting things right, and showing everyone that there is a higher law that can't be tampered with. That's why your vindication doesn't come from you trying to get even. You don't have to lower yourself to their level to see results. Divine justice works with precision. It doesn't throw random punishment around. It goes straight to the source of the wrongdoing and flips it back on them in a way that no one could have planned. Every lie they told about you ends up becoming the very thing that reveals their character. Every curse they sent your way ends up tying them up spiritually, and every plot they carefully put together to trap you has now become the exact place they're stuck in. That's not coincidence, that's surgical justice. The beauty of divine justice is that it leaves no loose ends. When humans take revenge, it usually creates more chaos, more bitterness, and more cycles of retaliation. But when God steps in, the balance is restored without you having to compromise your integrity. Your hands stay clean while theirs are exposed for what they truly are. That's why when people see your vindication, it carries weight. It doesn't look like drama, it looks like truth being unveiled. And here's the part that really shakes them. Divine justice always matches the seed. If they sowed lies, their downfall will be exposure. If they sowed betrayal, they'll be betrayed by their own circle. If they sowed traps, they'll find themselves ensnared. There's no randomness about it. What you send out is exactly what comes back, and it's multiplied. That's how God proves he doesn't play favorites, he plays fair. So no, you don't need to take comfort in watching them suffer. You take comfort in watching the precision of heaven restore order, while you continue to rise untouched. Their collapse isn't chaos. It's proof that divine law is alive and cannot be escaped. Number 5. The group became a cage for themselves. They believed that coming together against you would make them stronger. In their minds, unity was the key to victory. They convinced themselves that if they spoke with one voice, moved as one body, and planned in secrecy, they would overpower you. But unity in wickedness doesn't create strength. It creates bondage. By tying themselves together in jealousy and hatred, they built a cage that none of them can escape. What they thought would be their safe space, their power base, has become their prison. The truth is, when people gather for a cause rooted in lies and destruction, their unity is fragile from the start. It looks powerful on the outside, but on the inside, it's toxic. Every word they spoke against you carried spiritual weight, and because they agreed to it as a group, they are now all bound by the same judgment. The same agreement they thought would protect them has chained them to each other's downfall. When one falls, all fall, because they chose to link their destiny to hate. This is divine law at work. Unity is powerful, but it doesn't discriminate. It multiplies whatever energy it carries. When people come together for good, blessings multiply. When people come together for evil, destruction multiplies. They activated a spiritual principle without realizing it, and now they are stuck in the consequences. None of them can pull away clean, because they signed their names in agreement when they joined the plot. What makes this even more brutal is that the very group they leaned on is the same group that will witness their exposure. They cannot even comfort each other because distrust has already crept in. Each one is silently wondering who will be the first to crack, who will confess, who will betray the rest to save themselves. The cage they built is tightening, and their own unity is suffocating them. What was supposed to make them strong has become the weight that drags them down together. And this is the irony of plotting against someone covered by divine order. You don't just destroy yourself, you drag down everyone reckless enough to join you. Their alliance wasn't power, It was a spiritual trap disguised as friendship, and now they are locked in it with no escape. Number 6. You were not supposed to fight back, you were supposed to witness. One of the hardest lessons for a chosen one to learn is that not every battle is theirs to fight. When people come against you with lies, betrayal, and schemes, everything in your human nature wants to defend yourself, clap back, or expose them. That urge is normal, but it's not always divine. The truth is, this particular plot was never meant for you to handle. It was meant to reveal how heaven fights for its own. Your role was not to swing back, but to stand back and witness. This is where many people get it wrong. They think silence means weakness. They assume you didn't respond because you were scared, unsure, or caught off guard. What they will never understand is that your silence was a strategy higher than anything they could comprehend. By refusing to retaliate, you weren't giving up the fight. You were handing it over to a court far more powerful than human hands. You were saying, this one belongs to God. And when heaven takes a case, the outcome is never in doubt. Your lack of response became the loudest response, while they were plotting louder and louder. You were making room for divine justice to work with surgical precision. If you had tried to handle it yourself, the battle would have stayed on a human level. But because you didn't engage, heaven was free to move it to a spiritual level, where the punishment is exact, unavoidable, and undeniable. That's why their collapse is not random. It's perfectly aligned with every seed they sowed. And here's the deeper truth. Chosen ones don't win by out-arguing or out-scheming their enemies. They win by outlasting them. You gave God permission to prove what silence really means. It's not fear, it's authority. Only someone confident in their covering can stand still while being attacked. Your silence was your way of saying, I know who I am, and I know who defends me. So, no, you weren't supposed to fight back. You were supposed to watch, to witness how the very schemes they designed against you collapse on their own heads. And now, as their words backfire, their lies unravel, and their unity dissolves, you stand as living proof that divine justice only needs your patience, not your retaliation. Your stillness was the sharpest weapon in the room. Number 7. Their envy was really an unspoken admiration. Envy often disguises itself as hate, but at its root, it's really an unspoken admiration. The ones who plotted against you weren't just filled with malice for no reason. They were confessing in a twisted way that you carried something they desperately wanted but could never become. Every insult, every rumor, every attempt to tear you down was really them saying, you have something I'll never have. They didn't hate you because you were weak. They hated you because you embodied a strength they couldn't fake. That's the irony of jealousy. It's a backhanded compliment. They studied you closely, hoping to find flaws big enough to reduce your shine. But instead of flaws, all they kept finding were qualities that exposed their own lack. Your resilience made them feel fragile. Your authenticity made them feel fake. Your ability to walk in purpose without begging for applause made them feel small. So rather than admitting that they admired you, they chose the easier route, to attack what they could never reach. The problem with admiration left unchecked is that it rots. What could have been inspiration for them became obsession. They could have learned from you, even respected you, but envy doesn't allow that. Envy demands destruction. It doesn't want to rise to your level. It wants to drag you down to theirs. That's why they plotted in shadows, because secretly they acknowledged your superiority, but didn't want to face it in the open. What they didn't realize is that their jealousy exposed them far more than it ever exposed you. People can see through the mask of hatred. When someone spends too much time speaking against you, it becomes clear that you occupy a space in their mind they wish they didn't. You became the measuring stick they compared themselves to, the standard they could never touch. Their every attack was an accidental confession that you were the one they couldn't stop thinking about. In the end, their envy wasn't really about destroying you. It was about the agony of knowing you carried what they longed for, but could never embody. And that's why karma feels heavier on them. because beneath all their plotting, they knew the truth. You were above them, and no amount of hate could ever erase it. Number 8. They mistook darkness for strategy. They thought they were being clever. They believed that moving in silence, plotting behind closed doors, and keeping their schemes hidden would give them the upper hand. To them, secrecy felt like power. But what they didn't understand is that darkness is not strategy. It's just a delay of exposure. When the target of your schemes is someone protected by divine light, hiding doesn't protect you. It only ensures that when you are exposed, it will be louder, clearer, and more humiliating. This is one of the oldest spiritual laws. What is whispered in the dark eventually echoes in the open. They mistook their temporary invisibility as success, but heaven was recording every detail. Their meetings, their words, their fake smiles, their subtle betrayals, none of it slipped past the eyes of divine order. The very thing they thought made them safe was the thing that made their downfall inevitable, because light and darkness don't coexist for long. When light shows up, darkness is forced to flee, and exposure becomes unavoidable. The arrogance in their thinking is what sealed their fate. They assumed that if nobody knew what they were doing, the damage would stick, and they could escape accountability. But secrecy doesn't equal safety. It equals storage. All they did was store up judgment that would eventually pour out at the right time. And when judgment comes, it never arrives quietly. It comes in broad daylight, when everyone can see, when there's no room left for excuses or cover-ups. Now the very whispers they thought were safe are becoming their loudest testimony. The lies they crafted in shadows are circling back, but this time as evidence. The strategies they thought were clever are unraveling into public embarrassment. And the more they try to hide, the more obvious their guilt becomes. That's the curse of moving in darkness. It gives you a false sense of control until light arrives, and then it exposes every crack you tried to cover. So their strategy wasn't strategy at all. It was arrogance dressed as wisdom. And because they dared to use darkness against a child of light, exposure wasn't just possible, it was guaranteed. Their secret has become their sentence, and now what they thought nobody would ever know is the very thing everybody is talking about. Number 9. The weight of their actions is generational. The seriousness of what they did goes far beyond their own lives. When someone rises up against a person covered by divine order, they aren't just gambling with their present. They're gambling with their bloodline. That's the weight of spiritual law. It doesn't only measure the individual, it measures the ripple effect. Their actions weren't isolated events, they carried seeds. And seeds, whether good or bad, don't stop at one harvest. They keep multiplying, sometimes long after the planter is gone. This is why divine justice feels heavier when it touches those who plotted against you. Their choices weren't just about gossip, lies, or betrayal. They tampered with a life chosen and protected. And when someone violates divine covering, the consequences don't just bounce back on them, they extend into the generations connected to them. The residue of their jealousy, their deceit, and their wickedness doesn't vanish. It attaches itself to their lineage until someone consciously breaks it. It may sound harsh, but it's the truth. What they meant for you, their children and grandchildren may taste. Just as blessings flow through generations, so do curses when fueled by wickedness. A seed of envy planted today can grow into patterns of failure, brokenness, or misfortune tomorrow. Not because God is unfair, but because spiritual law is consistent. By choosing to plot against you, they signed their family into a contract of consequences they never considered. And here's the deeper layer. This isn't even about revenge. It's about balance. Divine justice doesn't just punish, it teaches. Their descendants may now have to wrestle with the same darkness their parents or grandparents tried to unleash on you, forced to confront it so that they can break free. The bloodline carries the memory of those actions, and until someone chooses differently, the weight remains. This is why it's never wise to touch a chosen one. When you harm someone under divine covering, you don't just hurt yourself, You place an unnecessary burden on those who come after you. What they thought was a private scheme has now become a generational story. And while you rise, free and vindicated, their lineage may be left asking why misfortune keeps knocking at their door. That's not coincidence. It's the generational echo of choices made in arrogance against someone they were never supposed to touch. Number 10. Your survival was the ultimate judgment. The harshest judgment against them was never the chaos in their own lives. It was the fact that you survived. Survival in this case was more than just getting through. It was your living testimony that everything they worked for, all the energy they wasted, and every scheme they put together ended in complete failure. Nothing strikes harder than realizing that despite the effort, despite the numbers, despite the lies, you are still standing tall while they are left with nothing to show for it. This is what makes survival such a brutal form of justice. Every day you wake up in peace, it screams louder than any argument you could ever make. Every step forward you take is a direct contradiction to the outcome they planned for you. They wanted to see you broken, but you're building. They wanted to see you silenced, but your voice is stronger. They wanted to see you erased, but your presence has only grown. Their punishment is being forced to watch the very thing they said would never happen, your rise, unfold right in front of them. The human mind can't easily recover from this type of defeat. It's one thing to lose, but it's another to lose after investing so much into someone else's downfall. They didn't just fail, they failed publicly, because the evidence of your survival is visible to everyone. Their lies don't hold weight because you are living proof that the narrative they tried to paint was false. That's why your existence alone is enough to torment them. It keeps proving them wrong without you ever having to say a word. And the beauty of it is that your survival didn't require you to fight dirty or meet them at their level. You didn't have to lower yourself. You simply had to keep moving forward. That's why it cut so deep for them. It wasn't that you outplayed them, it's that you outlasted them. The fact that you continued to breathe, to grow, to rise, and to flourish while their schemes crumbled is the clearest evidence that divine justice was always in your favor. So yes, the ultimate judgment was not in their suffering, it was in your survival. You became the proof that no weapon formed against you could prosper, and every breath you take in freedom is their loudest and most painful reminder of defeat. Number 11. Their bonding over hate became their undoing. What brought them together in the first place was never real unity. It was their mutual hatred for you. That was the only common thread holding them together. They didn't truly trust each other. They didn't genuinely care for each other. And they certainly didn't have each other's best interests at heart. All they had in common was their envy of you, and envy is one of the weakest foundations you can ever build on. Anything that starts with hate is destined to collapse, because hate is unstable. It burns hot, but it doesn't last. This is why their so-called alliance is now crumbling. Once the energy of hating you is no longer enough to keep them glued together, the cracks begin to show. Old grudges resurface. Jealousies within the group begin to take over. Distrust creeps in. They start questioning each other's loyalty, each one secretly wondering who will be the first to flip, to betray, or to confess. The very hatred that linked them has now turned into suspicion, because deep down they always knew their bond was fake. That's the irony of groups like this. They imagined their numbers gave them strength, but in reality, their numbers only multiplied their weaknesses. Each person carried their own insecurities, their own fears, their own desperate need to belong, and putting them all together just made a toxic stew. Without love, without truth, without loyalty, there was never any real glue to hold them. Hate cannot sustain anything. It eventually eats the very people who carry it. Now they are being forced to taste the bitterness of their own creation. The same way they gossiped about you, they are now gossiping about each other. The same way they betrayed you, they are now betraying one another. The same way they laughed at your supposed downfall, they are now laughing at the cracks in their own camp. Their unity was never real. It was a borrowed moment, and the time on it has expired. And this is the divine justice in it. You never had to touch them. Their undoing was built into their very beginning. Because what starts with hate will always end with destruction. And the same envy that made them plot against you is now the force tearing them apart from the inside. Number 12. God delayed their judgment to expose their depth. One of the most confusing parts of being attacked is watching those who plotted against you appear to thrive. It feels unfair. You suffer in silence while they smile, succeed, and even boast as if they've gotten away with everything. But what looks like God ignoring you is actually God setting them up. The delay wasn't neglect, it was strategy. Heaven allowed their so-called prosperity for a time not to reward them, but to let them dig deeper into their own wickedness, so that when judgment arrived, it would be complete and undeniable. Judgment delayed is never judgment denied. It's judgment multiplied. Every extra lie they told, every new trap they set, every conversation they had in arrogance was another layer of evidence stacking against them in the spiritual court. If God had judged them at the first attempt, the lesson would have been light. But by allowing them to continue, He let their hearts fully expose themselves. They revealed the depth of their envy, the darkness of their intentions, and the cruelty of their spirit. Now, when judgment comes, it doesn't just correct a single action. It addresses the entire spirit that drove them. This is why their downfall carries so much weight. It's not a minor setback. It's a collapse. It's not a stumble. It's a complete unraveling. The longer they were allowed to move in secret, the greater the impact of their exposure. What once looked like them getting away with it is now the very reason their punishment is heavier. They built up a debt they cannot pay back, and now the bill has arrived with interest. The brilliance of divine justice is that it never moves too soon. If judgment had come quickly, some people might have thought you were exaggerating, but now, because they were allowed to go so far, no one can deny the truth. Their wickedness is obvious, their mask has fallen, and their downfall is public. What once seemed like silence from heaven was actually heaven letting the story unfold, so that no one could mistake who was righteous and who was corrupt. So don't be fooled by the delay. It was never abandonment. It was exposure. God let them reach the fullness of their wickedness so that their downfall would not only be inevitable, but unforgettable. Number 13. You were the mirror they couldn't face. You were never just a target. You were a mirror. Every time they plotted against you, it wasn't really about you. It was about the part of themselves they couldn't face. Your existence reflected the choices they didn't make, the courage they abandoned, and the authenticity they traded away for shortcuts, lies, and temporary approval. You became a living reminder of the greatness they could have stepped into. But instead, they chose envy over growth. Their attacks weren't an attempt to destroy you. They were desperate attempts to silence the reminder of who they should have been. The irony is that the more they fought you, the clearer the reflection became. Every lie they told about you only highlighted your integrity. Every trap they set only magnified your resilience. Every attempt to pull you down only confirmed that you were standing higher. Instead of erasing the mirror, they polished it. And so, in the end, they couldn't escape the reflection. They sharpened it. This is why their punishment feels heavier. Divine justice didn't just strip away what they built on deceit, it left them with themselves. There is no torment more severe than having to sit with the truth of your wasted potential. Losing material things stings, but losing the illusion you've built around your own identity is devastating. They are now forced to live with the reality that while they were busy plotting your downfall, you were growing, surviving, and becoming everything they secretly wish they had the strength to be. That is the weight of true karma. It leaves them alone with themselves. They are no longer distracted by schemes, gossip, or group hate. The silence they mocked you for is now the silence that surrounds them. And in that silence, the mirror stands unshakable, showing them what they could have been if they had chosen differently. Your survival was never just victory. It was exposure. It revealed that they never hated you. They hated the truth your life reflected back at them. They can no longer deny that their envy was an unspoken confession of admiration. Their punishment isn't just what they lost. It's what they now have to face every single day. The undeniable proof that they were the architects of their own downfall. Number 14. Karma was never about punishing them. It was about elevating you. Karma, in its purest form, was never crafted to entertain revenge fantasies. It was designed to realign what was out of order. When people plotted against you, the easy assumption would be that justice means watching them fall flat. But divine order works with greater precision. The collapse of their schemes isn't really centered on them at all. It's centered on you. Every single attempt they made to diminish you was converted into elevation. They thought they were digging holes for your burial, but in truth, they were laying the foundation stones for your rise. The vindication wasn't meant to soothe your anger. It was meant to restore balance. For too long, their lies and manipulations tried to bend reality, to paint you in colors that never belonged to you. Divine justice didn't just correct that. It reversed it. The shame they tried to put on you now sits on them, while the honor they tried to withhold is being handed back to you in overflowing measure. Their collapse doesn't float in isolation. It transfers momentum. Their exposure becomes your visibility. Their downfall becomes your breakthrough. Their resistance becomes your propulsion. This is why chosen ones often rise in unusual, unexpected ways. The very energy used against you becomes fuel for your next dimension. What was whispered about you in secret is now the conversation that elevates your name. What was used to mock you is the very narrative that reveals your strength. And so, your vindication is not passive. It is transformative. You don't just walk away intact. You walk away enthroned. That is the precision of divine justice. It never wastes pain. It doesn't let your endurance sit without reward. Their plotting became your staircase, each betrayal a step higher, each attempt to silence you a platform for your voice, each weapon formed against you an unintentional confirmation of your calling. So while they collapse under the weight of their own schemes, you rise under the weight of grace. That is why your survival and success sting them the most. It proves that what was designed to bury you became the very thing that lifted you. Karma was never about punishing them. It was about ensuring you stood taller, clearer, and stronger than before. It was never their story. It was always yours. The story of those who plotted against you is not just a tale of envy, betrayal, or failure. It is a testament to the power of divine order and the inevitability of justice. Every lie they told, every scheme they crafted, every ounce of hatred they poured into their conspiracy was never wasted. It became the proof of your untouchable nature, the mirror reflecting their own limitations, and the staircase that elevated you higher than they could ever reach. Their unity in wickedness became their prison. Their obsession became exposure, and their hatred became evidence of your unmatched essence. You didn't have to fight, argue, or retaliate. Your silence was not weakness. It was alignment with a force far greater than any human plotting. Every attempt to bring you down only revealed your resilience, your divine covering, and the truth that nothing built in envy can stand against what is meant to rise. Their collapse is not chaos. It is surgical justice, precise, undeniable, and complete. The lessons of their failure extend beyond them, echoing through generations, exposing the depth of human envy, and highlighting the relentless protection surrounding those chosen for greatness. And here is the ultimate truth. Karma was never about punishing them. It was about elevating you. Every attack, every hidden whisper, every plotted downfall was converted into momentum that lifted you higher. What was meant to harm you became proof of your power. What was meant to silence you became the platform for your voice. Their plotting was never a threat to your destiny. It was the engine that propelled it. In the end, the most profound justice isn't in their suffering. It's in your survival, your rise, and the undeniable evidence of truth standing tall while falsehood crumbles. They are left to face themselves, their envy, and the reflection of the greatness they could never embody. And you, untouched and vindicated, carry the lesson forward. Those who plot against the righteous are not just creating enemies, they are creating the very force that will expose and elevate them beyond their imagination. This is the law of divine order in action, precise, unyielding, and brilliantly fair. You are not just surviving, you are ascending, and everything they threw at you only confirms the power, protection, and purpose written over your life. Your journey is proof that no darkness can overcome light, no hatred can overshadow truth, and no plot can touch what is divinely ordained. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Let it ignite others too. Hit that subscribe button and join this community of awakened souls who refuse to settle for anything less than truth and divine alignment. Like this video to show your support for rising above negativity and witnessing justice in action. Drop a comment below. Share your thoughts, your experiences, or even the people this message needs to reach. And most importantly, share this with someone who needs to see that no plot against the righteous can ever succeed. Every click, every share, every word helps spread this powerful reminder. Truth, resilience, and divine justice always prevail. God bless you.